Yeah, so I have been a Talent Stack member since 2021. I work for a small consulting company called Tool for Solutions, and I mean we're real small, and we mostly work in the managed services space. But we've been branching out this year towards uh, the ISV partner side of things. So I'm really excited. So when Anita asked if there was anything cool anybody was working on, I was like, yeah, I'm working on an app for the AppExchange. I assume that everybody here is familiar with the AppExchange, at least through Trailhead, if not through actually going in there and looking for solutions. Um, well, there's two different kinds of apps that you can find on the AppExchange. There's the one that's called an ISV Force app, and then there's another called OEM apps. And OEM apps are like full products, like full softwares that they don't even look like Salesforce, but they're built on top of Salesforce. And then the ISV Force side of things is when you build something that just extends the functionality of something already in Salesforce. So in this case, we're extending the functionality of the case object. So that's where we decided, hey, we're gonna work on this app. I wanted to talk a little bit about how this started because I don't want to I can't talk too in depth about the app itself since it hasn't gotten through security review yet. We're still building it, but I wanted to talk a lot about the process of going through this. I think when I initially started Salesforce, a long time ago, when I was just getting through my admin exam, I had this really strong plan of eventually building apps on the AppExchange, and I did not know uh, what I was doing. And it seemed super simple at the time. And I was like, yeah, eventually this is what I'm going to do. And so going through this process has been just a huge learning curve for me. So yeah, the process kind of started with a custom solution. So we had a client who they needed something done. They needed to be able to see something on the case object, and there wasn't a good standard solution for it. So, of course, we went to the AppExchange to see what we could find there. And there was a solution there that kind of sort of did what we were what we needed, but it wasn't quite right. So ultimately, we decided to build something custom for this client. And from that, we kind of just looked at each other and said, this looks like it could be useful for other people. There's plenty of comments on this other AppExchange product that's like showing all the shortcomings, and other people need this tool. So what if we just made this extensible for other people? So it wasn't like, we didn't dig in looking for things to make on the AppExchange. This was more of a, hey, we already made this. Let's just make it for other people to use now. So that's how it started. Going down that process. So like I said, I work for a very small company. We're really only 3 people. And so I wear a lot of hats as a result. In this case, I was in charge of scoping the product and what the features would be included, as well as, eventually working on building it. But in this case, during the scoping side of things, that was very challenging. I had the existing custom solution to work off of. And one of the mistakes that I made early on in this process was thinking that it was pretty much done. That, oh, well, we had already done this. These are the things that we built the first time, so this is what we're going to include. And it didn't dawn on me like all of the things that I was taking for granted that I knew about the existing org that made it easier to build just a single solution for them versus orgs you don't know, right? When you don't know if you don't know what their org looks like, you don't know how they're using it, you don't know how many people will be using it, you don't know if it's going to be an admin only, you don't know if they have any developers on their team, you don't know what it's going to look like. And so there was a lot of back and forth about, well, we should not offer this feature and we should probably do this too, because this is, what features should be in and what features should be out. I think that it started getting very personal too for me, like building an app, but for other people, but like I felt like all the choices around it were very personal to me. So I was trying really hard, like not to make something really nice, but there was just a lot that I didn't know. And the discovery process is so different because it's clients, they have their requirements, they come to you and they're giving you their requirements. For this one, it felt like I was making the requirements, right? Like my team, we were making the requirements, and we didn't actually know what those all were going to be right away. So we were doing a lot of back and forth and trying to figure out, what's going to be in the MVP here. What is going to come out in the next release? What can we save for a future release? What do we absolutely have to get done now? And Salesforce requires that you do a lot more when you're developing an app to go into other people's orgs, security-wise. Like just the way you code is a little bit different. All of that's, you got to pass through their security review standards, and you have to adhere to a lot of best practices. Not to say that we weren't already using best practices, but when you know an org and you know everybody who's in there, you might not be adding the CRUD and FLS checks before every single query kind of thing. So it was a little bit different. How long does the security review process take? It can it varies, and you might end up going through it more than once. I think Salesforce's documentation says on average people go through it twice, but it, I guess, really depends on how much code you have in your solution, as well as how well you did it, because their QA team is really going to try to break your tool, and so it takes. I don't know the exact timeline for how long it would take to get through the initial security review, but Salesforce says that on average people go through it at least twice. Framework. I would love to know what you mean, a framework.
So if you were, because I've not built an app yet, so if you get started, is there maybe almost like a format that you have to follow to get the app up and running? So you mentioned security. So security, of course, is a feature that we know has to happen to access a platform. But is there any other requirements that you have to be sure to build when building the app?
Yeah, so the first thing that we actually had to get pinpointed was going to be the data model. Were we going to work with the case object, or were we going to create a separate custom object that it was, had maybe child records that it was working with? And once we knew, okay, this is where the data model is going to be, then we could start to work on the automations that were going to run these calculations happening in the background. The data model was definitely the first thing to know where's the information going to live once it's inside of Salesforce. And to that point, I think that when we started building, that was like the second half of, so like going, the first mistake I think I made a lot with scoping, was not really knowing the full extent to which we were going to need new features, additional features, and how much bigger it was going to be to build the app for any org versus for one specific org. And then when we started building, there were a lot of things that we didn't expect initially. And then as we started building it, we were like, oh, wait, we need these. We probably need to hold these values somewhere that, we probably need to make a nice UI for the end user to be able to customize some of these things. And getting started with the app development itself was very different, because when you are building a separate app for the AppExchange, you actually have to use, so you have to register a namespace. And I had not done that before. You have to use a Salesforce partner business org, and that is where you register your names. That's where you link your namespace. It's not where you register it. You actually register your namespace in like just a regular developer org, and then you link it in the partner business org. And so everything that you're building is going into this managed package. And I don't know how many people have used a managed package before or are familiar with having managed packages in their orgs, but the managed packet, everything's going to live inside the managed package, and there's this little namespace that's attached at the front of every object that you put into the managed package. And I think I registered this namespace, and the namespace being that little itty bitty name, that little, like, what you're calling your managed package. I'm trying to think of one, like a regular one that most people would have heard of off the top of my head, but I can't think of one that might be familiar to like everybody for some tool that maybe they have integrated in their org. Maybe like DocuSign. I mean, if you use DocuSign and you have DocuSign in there, like everything has this little prefix in front of their object names.
Grant management.
And the first time that I created, right? Okay, thanks, Jason. The first time that I created a namespace too, I thought, wow, that's a really dumb name. When I started seeing it everywhere, I was like, oh man, I gotta make a new namespace. This looks awful. Why did I? It was really long. It was practically the entire app name, but like truncated to fit into like 16 characters, but it was all 16 characters. And my boss was like, that's no, I'm gonna shrink that to an acronym, just much smaller. And so now it's just CBA, which is 3 little letters. Much nicer, much cleaner. But yeah, so everything kind of had to go through this process of setting up the namespace, then creating this managed package, and every feature that we built had to be packaged. And that's also not common when you're developing for a single org, like for a specific org. You're developing the features, but you're not packaging it up every time. And so this was, the process, it had to be packaged and then installed into another org to test. So that was a difference in just the way the development process went. And I think that was the difference between Salesforce development and product development. There was probably um, there's there's a huge learning curve between there because I've never done product development before, so I had to kind of better understand those things. And for the Salesforce security side of things, it was there was a lot that Salesforce. So Salesforce requires you to use this tool that they have called Salesforce Code Analyzer, and you have to use this tool when you're submitting your code, when you submit your package. What we ultimately decided to do was to use this tool throughout the development process. And I had no idea that it even existed, but the first time I used it, I thought, wow, why wasn't I using this all the time? So Salesforce Code Analyzer basically just checks your code. You can use it locally on your computer, but you can also integrate it with GitHub. And if I'm saying anything that is like confusing or talking about something that's, you know, like you're not familiar with GitHub or what I mean by local environment, please let me know and ask questions. But the tool itself checks your code as you write it, basically, for best practices, and includes several different rule sets around documentation too, so that then if somebody were to look through your code, they can very easily understand what it does, what each block of code is doing for you. Grammarly. I actually have never used Grammarly. Does that check your grammar as you run it, as you write, basically?
Yeah, you can add it as an add-on. I don't even know how to put together complete sentences anymore because I rely on it so much.
Then yeah, it's probably something like that. And it will tell you like, hey, you have this many violations related to security. You have this many violations related to code style, or some small ones related to documentation. And you can catch a lot of things very early in your development process. So I'm hoping that that works out in our favor when it's time to submit. But the code analyzing tool, my boss was like, hey, let's put this into our GitHub continuous integration setup, so that every time we open a PR, it checks. We run these checks. And that required me to set up a GitHub action, a GitHub workflow. And that was something that I had not done either. So that was a whole new experience as well. But I really loved using the tool, and will probably continue to use it going forward, just for the sake of, making sure that I'm adhering to best practices and code styles all the time. I mean, it catches even small things like you declared this variable and never used it, which happens frequently, I guess. So, you forget that you declared something and never used it. So it's a really cool tool. And that process has been really interesting, kind of keeping that security in mind, making sure that in fact, I don't even know if I really knew some of the best practices around queries. And as I was going through, like, one of the things that came up for me as I was building was I was building for a single, yes, it is free. It is free. Code Analyzer is a free tool. It's free to add it to your workflow if you have GitHub Actions enabled. And it's free to put into your local environment as well, to run locally. It's an extension. The extension is Salesforce Extension Pack, and Salesforce Code Analyzer is included in that. So if you have that extension, you have it in there. You just have to run the command, and it will scan your files, and it'll output in the terminal all of the errors for you. And I wrote a blog post about Salesforce Code Analyzer. It isn't released yet, but I will share that as soon as it gets through its PR review. But it details the commands that you can run and how you can look through those error codes as well. Sorry, I forgot where I was before that. I think I was talking about the different CRUD and F, like the all the things you need to do for queries that I wasn't really thinking about previously, like always including where clauses, limiting how many are going in. I initially started building thinking about, again, that single org, and I know how many users are in there, and I know how many cases they have. And so I wasn't thinking, well, what if they have, and then it all like dawned on me. I was like, oh my God, well, what if they have like 10,000 cases? I mean, I don't know. What if they have some really weird, large number of cases that they need to run this automation on every day? You know, how's that going to work? And so I realized, oh, I needed to really bulkify my code and make it usable for really large instances and not just what I was thinking of in my head. So there was that. I think those have been the three biggest lessons that I've taken away from this, is that like scoping for a product you're building yourself is much harder. And there is probably going to be a lot of back and forth when you realize, oh, wait, actually, we need this too. And we need that. And we probably didn't need this. At least not in version 1. And that security really has to be top of mind from the beginning. Like you have to be thinking about making your app secure, because ultimately trust is really important for Salesforce. So they want to make sure that anything that's going on their AppExchange is something that people can trust is safe to put inside of their org as well. So is there anybody on this group that, what do you have to do to make it more secure? You definitely have to make sure that your, you know, if you're coding, for instance, you have to make sure that your queries are all using, that the user who would be running it has the permissions, has the field level permissions, has the object level permissions, you know, that they have the permission to run the code and change the objects, right? That they have the ability to update it. You also want to make sure if you have anything that's front facing, that users that is sorry, when I say front facing, public facing, that no one can accidentally damage the data, the integrity of the data in the org through like a public facing form or some sort of input that is on the front end. But I wanted to ask, you know, this ended up being a larger group than I was anticipating. Are there very many people here who are considering or thinking about maybe publishing an app to the AppExchange? Maybe one day? Eventually, yeah.
So with starting with the app builder certification, going through the ground level.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly a learning curve. Sorry, some of the chat pop-ups are happening so quickly. um, in accounting for the larger orgs, do we test for higher volumes? We had to ultimately make it work for higher volumes, right? So it has to work for orgs that have a lot. Like so like I said, we're operating with cases. It has to work for a lot of orgs that have cases, right? It has to work. It's also involving a schedulable class. So it has to work for an org that may have any number of schedulables running. And the test data, so because it's Apex, we're creating bulk tests. So we are creating like, inserting like large numbers of cases all at once that would otherwise, that could potentially break the queries or exceed limits, that kind of thing.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah,
That was my
sure.
question. I guess I'm just thinking of like, how do you go about setting that up, and how do you make it repeatable? Because like, for example, I'm on a team and our product is on an AppExchange. So whenever we're going through a release, yeah, we have UAT and the QA department that is doing some bug testing, but it's also on us to kind of figure out how we're going to do that. So if I'm going to use the casing example, I want to have 10,000 cases, or I want to have a certain number of users that are going to go through those cases. Manually creating them, even through scripts right now, I think I hit exceptions like once I get to somewhere around 1,000, right? You hit SQL limits or other limits like that. So I'm thinking of like, do I have to use data loader as a tool, or are there other ways of scripting this? Because I'm trying to not have this process take a day or two to set up on every iteration, right? Because we're releasing every month. So I'm just trying to think of for myself, how do I do that?
So like you're talking about in like your sandbox org where you're testing it manually?
Yeah, sandbox org or scratch org, because even if I'm going to test it manually, I have to set that up first. So if it's a scratch org, it'll be a few thousand, right? Like 1 or 2,000, because you can't put more than that. But if it's a sandbox, you can have a lot more records. But creating that manually is kind of tedious each time. So if like there's scripting or anything else that's involved, it might be like easier to do.
So I have not gone beyond the scratch org at this point. So I haven't tested, what would happen if we're manually creating like tens of thousands in the sandbox area. For the scratch org, it is just repetition. At least that's the best way that I have found to do it. I cannot tell you that I have any better or faster way of creating records other than just running the same scripts. If I figure out though a better way to add that data, maybe using data loader or something like that, I would let you know. In fact, I'm gonna write that down.
Okay, yeah, because I'm doing the same thing. I tried setting up data loader, and then the version of like Java I have in my system, like it created some problems, and I'm like, it's going to be faster to do this manually. You have to run the same script a bunch of times versus automate it. So I gave up, but I was like, there has to be a better way to do this.
And so you're specifically asking like how to create thousands
Yeah,
of test records.
Yeah, because it took me like an hour or so to create like 7,000 records because I kept hitting limits, and I'm like, this should just be a click. But and then we have to do that every time, right? So it's today, it's the next time that you try to test this. If you make a small change and you have to do this again, right? Like you're gonna have to go through that setup all over again. Yeah.
I'm gonna write it down, and I will try to get a follow-up with any questions like this. I would love to look into that, and especially I'd like to like try doing it too.
Maybe you can try to create a flow.
Yeah. And also, I wonder.
They add more and more flow nowadays, than at the beginning. And if you use Apex or Trigger, like depending on what you do it, So
Like,
they're
how does
always
that
like new. Before it was just screen flow, and now like in the flow builder, there's more and more things adding, So because automation, if it's a basic unit test that you're doing, or if you're updating something, it depends what you're doing exactly, what you're adding on your org. It's different, and there's some trigger, and you have the governance, and it's the reason you need to have a data dictionary to know your governance, and you create that, the table, and you have that all on the study guide developer and Salesforce. You have all the different things.
Can you write that down for me? And into chat, like maybe some bullet points?
I'm good. I'm beginning, and because I was issued that, and did you use the Apex Study Guide developer in the past?
Sorry, can you say it one more time?
The study guide? Wait, I'm going to look for it.
Wait, while she's looking for that, I just have a question of like the whole process. Is a security review like the initial time you're applying to put something in the AppExchange, or is there like, I don't know, I've never even looked. You hit apply now or whatever and submit, like fill out a form or something. What does that process look like?
So we haven't submitted it to the security review just yet, but you do have to compile a good amount of documentation. You have to give them all of your tests set up, and you have to have the package. And I think you even have to, and Juan, you may know this better than me, I think you have to actually give them an org to test it in, like a space to test it in. Or maybe they just throw your managed package into something. But you submit it, they'll review it. Every time you submit to the AppExchange, you have to pay for it. If it's a product that's going to be sold, basically. If it's not like open sourced, then it's about $1,000 a pop. So every time it goes in, but like I said before, that most people do get through it at least like 2 times. Like they do it twice, and then they fix the errors that they were found the first time, and they resubmit. But yes, that's when you're first doing the app. Not every subsequent release requires you to go through security review again. I'm not as familiar with what makes it necessary again. But I do know that you like once we submit it the first time, we do still have to do the testing on our end, but like we won't have to, if to make small changes, very small changes, we won't necessarily have to keep resubmitting it to security review. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so you just pretty much have to have everything ready, and that is how you submit, period.
For your MVP, yeah, for that first one. Yeah. And so this was the link here. This is for the developer limits.
Yeah, the governance, like the query in Apex. I'm a beginner, and like Sally, she give like free course every Thursday, guys, if you want to go, and it's coding, and she's very great. If you don't know, if you're a beginner, it's okay, and she teach you. Because I took like for the Rad Woman, I did the part 1 developer, and I learned about that. And I still have to go through because it was a lot of information. So I'm taking, she was my coach, and she said she offered free course, guys. So it's Thursday. And so I'm going and I'm still learning, and it's very cool. And this is for Apex, because if you use Java, JavaScript is different, depending on what you do. And there's governance limit because we share everything on Salesforce. Well, attendance, And so we need to share the resource. And this is one of the complex things you have to do when you do the code or when you're an admin. You have to think about that. And it's very complex. And so, and she has like, when you go on Sally, like she has like a bunch of courses on YouTube, like the beginning, and you can understand a bunch of things. But this is the way she told us. She always told us go to the Salesforce guide developer, because things change all the time at Salesforce, like everybody knows. So it's hard to keep up with everything. And this is the guide, and you go for the Apex, and you can know what's going on. So hopefully this will help. It's complex. I work on the app at Apple from scratch, and I know it's very complex. But at the end, you will see it will be so great.
Oh, thanks for sharing.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I also saw you added another question. So I'm seeing like a couple questions. I'm trying to like go back through it. It was going very fast at first. Kiva, you asked if I was App Builder certified as well. Yes, I am. I am. Actually, I think I'm 9 or 10. I can't remember. 9 or 10 times certified now. I do have my App Builder certification. That was actually the second one that I got after the admin. And there was another question about how much experience would you need to get started? Let's see. I mean, I've been a developer now for almost 4 years, I guess. Well, three and a half years. So, and I'm not, I would not consider myself in any way an expert at all. I would say that I'm just getting out of that early dev stage and kind of getting better at recognizing things that I should stop doing in code. But I, how much experience would you need to get started for this? You do need to become a partner. You need to sign up for the Salesforce. You need to sign up as a Salesforce partner for their partner program. And that's how you get access to the partner business org, which is what you'll need to create your managed package. But not every managed package that goes on the AppExchange is code. There are a lot of flows and lightning bolt solutions, like templates from the Experience Cloud that go onto the AppExchange. So it really just depends on what you're trying to build, what it's going to do, how much of the platform it's going to touch. So you don't necessarily need to be a developer. I don't think you need to be a developer to put a managed package on the AppExchange, but you would need to know how to set up your namespace, how to set up your how to pull that data, how to pull your, if you're building a flow or something, you need to be able to pull the flow metadata into your package. And so I've never done it any other way except through like VS Code and version controlling. So even though I did do the App Builder exam and they talked a little bit about change sets, I have never actually used change sets in my life, and hopefully will never have to. But I imagine that a strong admin could also easily put an app on the AppExchange. And then this keeps moving every time I go to look for one of the other questions. So I know I saw another one.
The next one was from Hildy. I can't remember all the variations we agreed upon. She asked, did one person was in charge to build the data model, or was it a team effort?
So it has been a team effort. As I said, we're only really 3 people in my company, and my boss pretty much was hands off of this the whole time. So it's just been me and my colleague just working through it and putting this together. And we do this in addition to our client work. So it's been a good team effort here between the 2 of us. And then my boss comes in and, like I said, it says, yeah, because it looks good. Bye.
Is your coworker more or less experienced, or about the same as where you're at?
About the same, yeah. She and I are about the same. So it's been good. We've been able to bounce things off of one another. And my boss is more experienced. I mean, an architect. He's been in this for a while, so he kind of just looks over what we're doing and helps guide us in the right direction if we're doing something weird. So
there's another question from Hildy. What is a change set?
so when you are migrating data, metadata from, I don't know, was that a sarcastic question or was it a real question? Wait, before I answer.
It's a real question, I think.
It was okay. I just wanted to make sure.
It's
Sometimes,
real. Yeah,
okay,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, I gotcha.
I heard before and I was completely lost the meaning, you
Sarcasm
know.
often goes over my head, so I do sometimes have to ask. No, so when you're migrating metadata from one org to another, you would, I think in the past, the way to do it, the only way to do it at one point was to collect it into this change set. So the changes you made basically in your metadata. So like if you changed a field label or if you added a flow and you wanted to migrate that from sandbox to another sandbox where you do like your UAT or something, you would put it in this change set, and that would be how you would move it over to the other org. That was an old way of doing things. I'm sure that there are still there's some people who use it. I think it had some limitations around what metadata could actually go in there, but as I've said, I have thankfully never had to do that. So I'm very glad. Is the app it's two second generation product development. And we decided to go with that one because that's the recommended approach now. So Salesforce specifically is telling people like you should use the second generation product development if you're going to make an app, do it this way. So that's how that was kind of like, there wasn't a scenario in which we would have chosen to go with the first generation when Salesforce is telling us to use the second one. Oh, and it disappeared again.
Sorry.
And the question was, is change set the name of the tool? So change sets, I think if you're in a sandbox and you go into setup, you can like type in change sets and it change set, and there's a way to access it through that. I am by no means an expert in using change sets. We do everything with version control, where we have our Scratch org set up and we're creating these features in Scratch orgs and pulling them down to our source code and deploying them into other orgs. So we don't actually use the change set model. It is an older model, and I think I think Anita dropped a link to some documentation around change sets. And are there any other questions around this topic?
I have a follow-up question. The 1GP to so like what, sorry to explain already. I was looking for the link. What's the difference between 1GP
First
and
generation package development and second generation package development? I didn't do a ton of research into what the differences were. Second generation package development, I know that like we're not going to have that little button to configure the app next to our installed package. We're going to have like a Lightning app that's going to be in there. And there's probably some other good differences between them. I wish I could tell you that I did a lot of research into which one to use, but we didn't. Once as long as Salesforce says, hey, do it this way, their instructions pretty much push you down that line. So the app is a second generation. It's built that way.
Oh, looks like another question. Do you write your code directly in the developer console of the org, or do you use Visual Studio Code?
I use Visual Studio Code. Yeah. I very rarely go into the developer console. In fact, I think the only time I really go in there is if I want to like, because I think I have an extension that is not working in my local, and I've just been too lazy to fix it. So I go in there sometimes to see my debug console. So that's about the only time I'll go in there. My VS Code is where everything's done there. Yeah. No. So this is going to be an open source app. So we are not publishing this to earn any kind of money from it. This is a, can we do this test app? You know, is this something that we like? Do we want to continue doing this? Do we want to go further? Do we want to like eventually do something, you know, bigger? This was something that also like Salesforce Labs had the other app, the one that didn't quite do what we wanted to do. So we weren't going to like, what are we competing with Salesforce Labs? No, we didn't want to do that. This is just going to be open source. Once we get it out there, it'll be free. We'll have links. People can fork the repo, that kind of thing.
Wait, so people drop $1,000?
Oh, no. When it's open source, you don't have to pay that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's very nice of you.
Yeah, no. As long as you, I don't think that. So, and also Salesforce Labs is also free, so you don't have to pay for anything that Salesforce Labs provides. And so, yeah, this is just going to be for fun. Here's how it works. Here's how to do this. And, you know, I think we'll probably include a little bit of, you know, help, like if users have questions or something, or there's error codes, they can send us an email and we'll help figure that out. But we're not going to, it's not the kind of app where we would have additional support set up for it. What does it say? Open source with option support. Yes. So you know, as far as like apps from the AppExchange that are useful, I don't know. Like there's going to be lots of different ones out there. It really just depends on what you need it for, right? Like what apps do you like? Like I want to say that one that I thought was pretty good was FedEx had a product, had an AppExchange app. I don't know if they still do. That was, you know, if they're still supporting that or not. But they're like the AppExchange products. Some of them just extend the functionality of your org. So, you know, you might look at a product and say, oh well, I don't know how to do this, so this app might make sense. But some companies, they're not very, like they don't want to, you know, it depends on your company or the client and the org, whether they want to use products from the AppExchange, whether they're willing to pay for products from the AppExchange. It is, and which ones to use. Well, you know, I don't know that there's a best apps to get started with, because I don't think you really need anything from the AppExchange. But Code Analyzer is not an app on the AppExchange. No, Code Analyzer is it's part of an extension. So if you're using VS Code, you can add this you can add extensions to help you with Salesforce. The one that has it is Salesforce Extended Pack. I think it's called Salesforce Extended Pack. And that one has Salesforce Code Analyzer in it. And then you run it in VS Code. to use it without VS Code, you can add a workflow to GitHub, but it's not like an app that you would use. It's not something that you would use then just like in the UI of Salesforce, if that makes sense.
DLRS, what does that do, Jason?
What is DLRS?
Declarative lookup rollup summary.
Oh, yeah. That is a good one.
What does that one do? Wait, I'm sorry.
It declaratively looks up and rolls it. No, it's like you can do roll-ups on like lookup fields, basically, kind of. And so, like, you know how master details can have roll-ups.
Yeah.
You can do those on lookup fields.
Oh, okay.
Basically. I don't use it as much, but it's popular.
I think I had to add that for like a finance company. I did side gig work for one time. It was really helpful.
Yeah, there was another one. I would just look at Salesforce Labs apps, kind of just on, they've got so many weird ones that are useful. There's one I found like recently that was like super helpful for flows, and I'm blanking on it. I was like Data Fetcher maybe for Salesforce Labs. It's awesome. That's another cool one.
You want to answer Van's follow-up question? When you build your next app to retire, what will you do differently? Do you want to build another app after this?
I do. I actually want to go the whole OEM route and build a whole. I think we should. We have an idea in mind, and it would be like it's a separate application that sits on top of Salesforce, and so that's where you sell the licenses with the product. And yeah, I think it'd be fun. Honestly, I like this way more than I like client work. I mean, don't tell any. I mean, I like my clients; they're great too. But yeah, doing this is like, it's kind of a little bit like working on your own, right? So I like that. And I like the business model of a lot of those OEM apps where where you can sell it in a subscription model.
Yeah. I like being able to make money when I sleep.
You know, it's a good thing. And then you mentioned learning GitHub Actions. What does the rest of the CI/CD flow look like for your team, and how do you guys get it set up? So this is the first workflow that we've added. Most of our process right now is still very manual. Like we submit for each feature that we're creating, we submit a PR for it. It gets reviewed. It goes after it is approved. Then it is merged, and then it goes through a couple of branches before it actually gets into production. One of which is UAT, and so that's, so we don't have like a ton of like automatic stuff going on, but I am really excited to add some more workflows. I'd love to add some manual, like I don't love manual smoke tests, and so I'd love to add some automated testing scripts. I think that's something that I'd look forward to building more in the future. And I lost the rest of that question completely in this. I'm sorry.
So does I guess we don't use GitHub Actions, we use Circle CI. So I was wondering, do you have like integration tests that you're running when like,
No.
Okay, because I was going to ask, like ours take 2 hours, and I'm trying to make it faster, and they're just like trying to figure out if there's a better way to do that. But all right, you guys aren't there yet.
Yeah, we're not quite there yet. This is like the first workflow that we've added. So, and I think it's good, but I think it's something that we're going to continue doing more and more of. And for our clients, we don't use it. we don't use we don't have any kind of continuous integration, continuous development setup. So this is like, this project is separate from our client work. It's our first, independent, exclusive project. So I think that we will do that more for ourselves rather than in our client work.
I don't know if there's another question in the chat, but I wanted to ask, how did you guys get your client to, like, how did you guys breach the conversation with your client about this? Because you guys did this development for them. It's deployed in their org. Typically, depending on the contract, that code might be theirs, might be yours. How did you guys kind of say, hey, we're going to do this thing? Are you guys okay with it?
I was not in the room. I'm sorry. That would all have been something that my boss worked out, separate of us. So, he kind of, when we realized this is something that we wanted to do, he handles all of the face-to-face conversations with our clients. So
cool. Thank you.
Sorry.
This was really interesting.
Although, I'm going to ask him, Juan, I'm going to ask him that too. Like, the question was like, how to, I'll ask him. I'm going to send that in our next retro. So how did you actually approach this? Tell me now.
Yeah, because I've seen it in past project stuff, but I've never been part of that process. I've always wondered, there's code that we built that's just like, yep, it's theirs now, so I can't build anything similar. Like, contractually, I'm not able to ever work on something similar again. And then there's other work that I've seen them package in like accelerators or Salesforce Lab stuff, and I'm like, okay, like, how is this navigated? But yeah,
I'm going to ask him. I am genuinely, I didn't even think about that, but now I'm curious, like, how does that work? And it may be something that's really like in our contracts with them. I'm going to find out though.
Cool. We just have 2 minutes left. Does anyone have any other questions? Party at Tamara's place when she makes so much money with her next app. And her first SPY retirement party.
Hey.
I do have one more question.
Yeah.
Have you guys considered so this is a free application, but like, support doesn't have to be free, kind of like how Red Hat does for Linux? Like, is that even a consideration? Especially if you guys come from a managed service background, you guys have contracts like that for work that you already do. So why not for the app that you're going to build?
It's definitely something to consider moving forward. I think that because this app is something that we just really wanted to use to cut our teeth on, that we kind of wanted to like create it and then abandon it almost. Not abandon it, but like we might not make any future releases for it. We just really wanted to see what this process was going to be like and how to get through it. But if it if it looks like people are using it, then we would be, then that's something to consider, like whether or not we would charge to help maintain it and offer support. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for. Whether or not we would charge for support. I think it largely will depend on how popular it is, that kind of thing.
Okay. I had more questions, but I'm like, it's 7. I'm going to let you go. Sorry.
Feel free to DM me, Juan, if you have any more questions. You can find me on LinkedIn.
All right. I will, because I have more questions.
I have a question. It's not related to the app. How did you find the job that is with a small company,
How do I like that job?
Yeah, how did you find the job to know the philosophy and when you don't know the company, when you apply? Until you work with the people, but if you don't know the company, how can you know their philosophy, what they think out there?
Do you mean like the company that
Like your process? Yeah, when you went and because you are a talent stacker, you say, and you were looking for a job, how did you know that the company has the same value than you? When you
so
don't know the company, it's hard,
I wasn't working for my current company. So this is my my second role in the Salesforce space. And so my boss is an alumni from the same college as me. And so he reached out to me as an alumni, basically. And so, we went to the same school. We have a lot in common as a result. So I felt very comfortable, and there was a lot of perks to the job. So I felt really comfortable going there. And this was something that we talked about wanting to do even when I started. It's not something that we did right away, but he's been very good about kind of keeping it to his word for that kind of stuff. So and this is only my second role, my second developer role in space. And I have to say that so I haven't had a ton of like job search experience because I didn't really search for this job, but to know that the company was gonna be a good company, I think that if I had to do that in the future, I would probably just talk to other people who work there or who have worked there to see how they feel about it.
Cool. All right. 3 minutes over. Reach out to me if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you so much. This is a really interesting topic. You should submit to like some German events.
I would be too nervous. In fact, I was nervous for the people that were on here. So, but I thank you so much, all of you, for coming. This was really great.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.